80s is they formed the RTC Resolution Trust Company, and the Resolution Trust Company basically fire sold everything. People were buying houses literally for the pennies on a dollar, and I mean 20 cents on the dollar. I mean, it was horrible. And people were coming to Houston, meeting salespeople at the airport and buying a 100 house package and never leave the airport and never look at the houses. And then they turn around and do, creative things to sell them. And during that era, we were looking at a lot of tapes where the mortgage companies were taking back these houses and trying to buy the tapes. Well, fast forward to 2007 and 2008 when the lenders, the money was pulled out of the market. And in this case, what they did is they sat on the inventory. And when they sat on the inventory, they either didn't foreclose on it, or if they foreclosed on it, they wouldn't put it back into the marketplace. There's 3 or 4 different things they would do, but the inventory was racking up. And they called that the shadow inventory. And they are actually firms that would track that. And we would track it when we were doing our market reports. We would track that. We'd look at the shadow inventory, see that it's growing and it's getting bigger and bigger. And we had a guy come talk to our group talking about the shadow inventory. And what he had heard was that as a shadow inventory, at some point, it's got to be released into the marketplace. And when it does, it's going to really destabilize a recovering market. And so everybody was afraid of it. But what they underestimated was as the market was recovering, this shadow inventory was being absorbed. And what happened is the shadow inventory went high and then just started slowly coming down. And then all of a sudden, it got back to normal levels, normal pre-2007, 2008 levels. And people stopped talking about it. They stopped tracking it. It stopped becoming an item. And it went from people being scared to death of it destabilizing the market and crashing the market and driving us further into the, I guess, the basement. Then, but it never happened. The markets just the properties kept improving, and the shadow inventory went away. And I think what the lesson was, and this is as it relates to foreclosures, the lesson was that if we can sit on the properties and let the market take care of itself, there's a good chance that it will. And the more intervention we have, the more that we try to foreclose on these, the more we flood the market, the worse it gets. And so I'm not sure I've seen anybody tracking the shadow inventory, but people are being a lot more cautious. And the other thing that's different between 2007 and now, and this is a big one, and the guys I listen to, they say this is so big that it makes all the difference between 2007 and now, is that we have more equity in our houses than we've ever had as a percentage of value. So not just dollars, but a percentage of value. And so that because that's higher, now people can sell their properties and there's ready, willing, able buyers to buy them. And the credit has been eased a little bit where more people qualify. So I think our market is strong. I mean, all you got to do is look at months of inventory. It's not unusual to have 1 or 2 months of inventory. Equilibrium's considered to have 6 months of inventory. We've got 1 or 2 months. So this is a total absolute seller's market. And if you're an investor, wholesaler, buy and hold person, if you're not taking advantage of that and what that means and how that boils down to us as investors, how we should behave, you're missing an opportunity of a lifetime. So now some of the feedback we've got from some of our RIA members who are actually working with these loss mitigation departments and who are actual realtors for the large banks that actually foreclose and take these properties back. They say that the attorneys and the mortgage companies, the activity's picking up. They're doing more inspections on the properties, but so far, and although I didn't look at the numbers for this month, James, maybe you did. I don't know if our foreclosures went up in Texas this month than it did last month. We went to the Harris County auction yesterday, and I think we've gone 3 months in a row, and it looked like it was lighter yesterday than it's been for the prior 2 months. So not sure what's happening there, but it's like about a third or fourth of the crowd that you would typically see at these sales. And it's not just the amount of people there, it's the fact that these sales, they have very few properties that they're bidding at the foreclosures in these really large counties.
Yeah, the number of properties that they were auctioning off yesterday was a lot lower than the month before. February had quite a few more than March did. So want to go back. One of the things that you did talk about a few minutes ago, and maybe you covered this, but I do want to hit it again. One of the things that you were talking about was talking to people. So when you're talking to somebody that's in foreclosure, for example, let's pretend that I'm in foreclosure and you're talking to me. For one, I'm going to ask you a two-part question here. It's dangerous, but for one, how are you going to talk to me? And two, what are some of the benefits of working with somebody, like you or us, as a homeowner that's going through foreclosure?
Well, I think realize that these are real people having real problems, and they're doing whatever they can to survive. And some people have a strategy, and the strategy might not be in their best interest. For example, filing bankruptcy might not be in your best interest if you have equity in the house, because all that does is delay the inevitable. And some things change in people's life where their income's not going to increase. So if you were living on whatever, pick a number, a $10,000 a month income, and all of a sudden that's a $5,000 a month income, and you can no longer afford that house, you have a certain amount of equity in that property that gives you the option to downsize or buy a different property, maybe lower price, or maybe gives you some money to put in the bank. You have options. The longer you drag this on, the less options you have. So if you were to file bankruptcy, a lot of your money could be consumed in preserving that bankruptcy, but realistically, you can never recover from it because you just can't afford that property anymore. There's a lot of people who, it's not like a sad problem that we should cry over, but there's people who, in Texas, and it's very similar to this, but in Texas, our tax rate is 3% more or less. It could be 2.5%, it could be 3.5%. But imagine that you're on a fixed income and your property goes up to, when you bought it, it was $100,000, and now it's gone up to $500,000. And you say, well, it's hard to feel sorry for somebody like that. But let's say you're a 75-year-old widow, and you don't have that energy and ability to move around as easily as you could when you were 30 years old. Now you've got this relatively valuable house, but now you got $15,000 a year in property taxes that are owed, and so you're being priced out of your house, and you're literally being forced to sell your house, and it's like it's a tough situation to put somebody in, but that kind of stuff happens. So bad things happen to good people, and if you're interested in buying foreclosures, then you got to start helping people solve their problems. A lot of times there's good options for them. Your job is not to steal their equity. Your job is to give them a fair price for the property, fix the property up, or whatever needs to be done. A lot of times too, imagine if you're being foreclosed on, there's a good chance you're going through some sort of depression. And it is either you were going through depression beforehand, or you're going through depression as a result of the foreclosure. So